Greetings, friends. As I write this, we are in the third week of Advent, the week that First Presbyterian Church of Sterling, Illinois celebrates Joy Sunday. Advent invites us to live in the present, to be mindful of all that has happened in the past, and to await the joy of a new beginning. This year, 2020, so far, has been like no other. In just this year, we've experienced devastating wildfires, a global pandemic, a stock market crash, riots, hurricanes, murder hornets, and oh yes, let's not forget the 2020 election. Just looking back over this historic year can cause our stress levels to reach record highs. Along with feeling stressed, we are feeling deep sorrow and a sense of loss. As we look back at this past year, joy may not be the first word that comes to mind. Sadly, all too many of us may be secretly hoping that December flies by so we can slam the door on 2020. We may not take time to think of, let alone make room for joy. Which has led me to wonder, could it be that the waiting, wonder, hope, and joy of Advent may be another casualty of the coronavirus pandemic? I decided to do some research and found that the dictionary definition of joy is to experience great pleasure or delight. When I looked up the biblical description of joy, it was described as intense, ecstatic, celebrative, and or exultant happiness or pleasure. One theologian writes, joy has a mysterious capacity to be felt alongside sorrow, and even sometimes, most especially, in the midst of suffering. This is because joy is what we feel deep in our bones when we realize and feel connected to others and to what is genuinely good, beautiful, and meaningful, which is possible even in pain. Joy does not depend on good circumstances. After finding those definitions, I decided to revisit this past year and look for those moments that brought us joy. The first thing that came to mind was the colorful heart-filled windows that popped up all over the country to share positivity, hope, and beauty as we practice social distancing. In the midst of our huge heartache, we were able to share joy by simply pasting a colorful heart to our windows. Let's also talk about connecting through Zoom and the joy many of us felt after we sorted out how to use it. I dusted off my Joy of Cooking cookbook and joyfully cooked myself into the Weight Watchers program. Another source of joy in the midst of the pandemic was reconnecting with our neighbors. We shared joy stories over fences in our backyards, called to check on each other, and dropped off dilly bars on warm summer nights. We also found joy as we reconnected with nature. As the summer days grew longer, we went outside, we took walks and long drives. We got out the sidewalk chalk and created art in our driveways. We cooled off with a tall iced tea or a cold glass of wine as we stargazed from our front porches. I'll never forget the sound of joy in my husband Tim's voice when he was able to reconnect with his barbershop chorus. Singing has the power to bring joy to so many. The nationwide increase in pet adoptions during the pandemic was good news for orphaned animals and a huge source of joy for us humans. Friends, these are just mere moments of joy that can be recounted from the past 9 months. My hope is that as I've shared these, you've been picturing in your mind many, okay, maybe I'm going a bit overboard here, but many more joyful moments from this year. Earlier, I told you that I had looked up the biblical description of joy, and it was described as an intense, ecstatic, celebrative, and/or exultant happiness or pleasure. That made me think of the joy we feel when we see a newborn baby. That intense, ecstatic, celebrative feeling of exultant happiness and pleasure. Don't you imagine that that's the same sort of joy the shepherds felt? I imagine their joy when the angel brought good tidings, saying to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloth and lying in a manger." Friends, may God open all our eyes and hearts to the joy all around us, and joy to all of you during this season. With love, Nan.